I would have preferred HS2 fully delivered all the way up to the northeast, Northern Powerhouse Rail fully delivered. But as you say, they cancelled that 2 years ago. And it's once you're in between a rock and a hard place, there really is no good decision. But if you were to ask the people of Newcastle, the people of Sunderland, would you rather have more metro lines, a better bus service, or potentially be able to travel 140 miles to Manchester and then get on a train to London? Well, obviously, they're going to choose the investment in the northeast. I think the reason people are so frustrated about this is, how did we even get to this situation in the first place, escalating costs? The whole system of HS2 only really works if you deliver all of it. And the situation we're in now, it's not a good situation. But for people like me who are representing specific parts of the country where we've had very little transport investment, I've been speaking to the Secretary of State for Transport spoke to him yesterday, spoke to him recently, saying, look, if you are going to cancel this, if this is on the cards, which we know it was, make sure that you don't take the money back to Treasury. Make sure you invest it in places like this. I want to build a total transport network where the buses and the metro and the train system integrate, where we can have free fares for under 18s. So we boost public transport for the long term. And we are getting more money for that. So let's call it a silver lining in the cloud, shall we?
OK. I suppose one of the questions, actually a question that I put to the Transport Secretary, and that was, well, what if these projects also overrun? What happens then?
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? I mean, can government get good value for money? And that's where the devolution really comes into it. So if you look at, we've had a project called Metro Flow, which has been increasing the capacity on the Tyne Mayor metro system. On time, on budget, we did it. So it is possible to do these things. And I think that's where, when the sort of command and control from Whitehall, where there's too many voices asking for changes all the way through, I think you're setting yourself up to fail. So part of what was announced yesterday was, at the moment, our new devolution deal comes into effect in May. We get £600 million of capital. We're getting an extra 1.8 billion in the next phase, partly as a result of yesterday's announcement. That means we get to decide how it works. So we can talk to the businesses, to the schools. We can come up with a transport plan that works for us, and then we are responsible for it. I think that's the way that these decisions get made, in a way that they get delivered and deliver value for money.
OK, £36 billion. How far will it go? I mean, the Elizabeth line here in London cost half of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's ways of doing things in a very expensive way. There's ways of doing things in a cheaper way. So it was obviously HS2. Had it been 36 billion, that probably would have delivered it. It was going to be extra tens of billions on top of that. The fact that no one can give us a reliable figure for what it would have actually cost, I think, says a lot about the management of government. Rishi Sunak has been Chancellor, Prime Minister, Chief Secretary of the Treasury. You know, he, of anyone, should have been on top of the costs of this. So there are questions to answer about that. So this is where you've got to also make sure your investment is getting more people onto the public transport network, so it pays for itself in time. And this is where integration really matters. Big systems that don't integrate with the buses, with the existing light rail systems like the metro in the Tyne Mayor area, well, if you're building things piecemeal rather than in a coordinated way with a proper total transport network in a region, then you're not going to get the same kind of value for money. So this is where devolution really pays the dividends.
OK. I also put to the Transport Secretary that, in all reality, the government knew that they were going to scrap HS2. And they kept saying, we haven't decided, we haven't decided, we haven't decided. But the Prime Minister, as we know, recorded before he left London on the Sunday, or perhaps even on the Saturday, that it was to be scrapped. How should we process that information?
To my mind, it was cancelled 2 years ago. The entire business case depended on delivering the whole thing. They cancelled the northern leg. It wasn't going to Leeds, wasn't going to York, wasn't coming anywhere near Newcastle in the northeast. In July, the Infrastructure and Projects Authority gave it a rating saying it was red and undeliverable. So all this will we, won't we? Yeah, I think that was political messaging. To my mind, they'd already made the decision. You know, it's a bit like, I don't know, you're going to get up for work in the morning. Yes, you only make the decision when you finally get out of bed, but you know you've got to do it. So it has been cancelled for ages. and they finally just got around to saying, perhaps they made the decision about what they were going to do with the money. And I, like I'm sure many of the people, were lobbying the Transport Secretary, saying, if that's going to happen, make sure you spend the money on our projects. Perhaps that was what they were doing at the last minute.
Just seeing your rainbow flag there, I'm guessing it's a rainbow flag rather than one for Cusco. What did you make of what the Prime Minister had to say yesterday about a man being a man and a woman being a woman? That's all there was to it.
Yeah, you know, we've had these very divisive culture wars issues for a long time. My opinion is let people live their lives the way they want to live their lives. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the days when you would perhaps see two men walking down the street holding hands and people regarded that as offensive. And we've made huge strides in dealing with homophobia. Let's not go backwards. Let people live their lives the way they want to live their lives. They're not bothering anybody else, and just have respect for people.
Hear, hear. Good to talk to you, Jamie. Always a pleasure. Thank you.